Welcome to Casual Watch Talk, the podcast from the Casual Watch Reviewer YouTube channel. Join us as we talk everything watches, from watch collecting, the latest horology news and interviews. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe on your favourite podcast app. Let's dive into the show. Today in This Week in Watches, we discuss the solar Powered Cartier, Citizen watches go way too far with the Star Wars references, a review services of the Black Panther AP, Breitling go back to having 2 dials on their watches, and we discuss the glycine that went to space, as well as a very interesting Bell & Ross. Welcome to Casual Watch Talk. You're joined by Sam and Chris. How have you been, Chris?
Excellent. We are on shot number 2.
Oh, I'm doing my second tomorrow. How did you get on?
Good. It was, the second one, first one was fine. Second one, I think she got me in my bone. She got in there. It was pretty sore for a day or two, but feeling good. Feeling like end of the era, but also you'll find this maybe amusing, and maybe our listeners will too. I feel like, because we've been in this sort of pandemic lockdown mode, I'm not in a hurry for it to end. And all of my friends are like, when are we getting together? What are we doing? And it's overwhelming. It's too overwhelming. So I'm slowly turning up the volume just a little, oh yeah, so maybe the end of May. What are we, Memorial Day? We're going to do something Memorial Day?
Since we moved to Florida, obviously there's big touristy parts. So we've got used to being around big crowds. We're still masked up and everything. Yeah. It's definitely weird the first time that you go out. Yeah. I think people will just get used to it, won't they, after a while?
Yeah, and I feel like everyone's sort of adopted the etiquette. If you're totally vaccinated and you're outside, cool, whatever. But as soon as you go into a place, you mask up, grocery store, food, etc. And it's been good. And I think it's kind of be the way we'll go for at least probably the rest of 2021, but it's coming to an end, which is really good. We'll get back to normal, and really excited to have watch meet get-togethers again. So
yeah, exactly. That'd be good fun.
Yeah, we'll have to. Can't wait to post on Instagram and share stories here in the future.
I posted it on my Instagram, but I found that photo I took of your custom space turtle the very first time we met at a watch meet. So check out that on Instagram. Yeah. I'll throw up a picture here.
I think it was in the Omega booth. That was I think that's where it was.
Oh, at the boutique. Yeah,
yeah, the boutique there. And that had me. We'll talk a little bit more about space watches, but had me. Had me nostalgic for that. A lot of fun putting that together.
Should we kick it off with a bit of watch obsessions? Have you had a watch obsession this week?
My watch obsession, besides the space stuff that we'll talk about a little later, continues. So I let everyone know on the Facebook group, and guys, if you're watching this, listening to this, and you're not a member, head on over to the Casual Watch Talk Facebook group. Ask to join. Lots of good content and conversation going on over there. But I said it over there first. So I have the Citizen CA7040 that we talked about last week on order, and I got the blue one. So I was strong for the black dial, and then I took there was another piece of stock photo, or not stock photo, another set of photos of it that I posted over on the Facebook group, and I was like, I have to get the blue one. So
yeah, it looks really nice. I don't know what you think, but isn't blue, I think, is one of the hardest to judge photos versus when the watch turns up?
Yeah, it really is. I saw 2 or 3 photos of it, so I have a good feeling that it'll be just a nice, sort of not muted, but a well done royal blue color, and the subdials are have got some texture to them, so I think it'll be fine. But you're absolutely right. If you've ever searched for the blue Tudor Pelagos, you think that watch comes in 80 different colors of blue until you have it on your wrist. So I'm hoping Citizen nailed the blue, but pretty confident.
I'm looking forward to seeing it and seeing what you think of it.
Yeah.
My watch obsession, well, one's a bit of a funny one, but if I'm being honestly truthful about my watch obsession, I for the last however many months, I have not taken this marathon watch off. I really like it. Trying it on different straps. It's a quartz, but I've been having a lot of fun. We've been just to throw it on, know that it's working. It's a larger watch, but I think it's nicely proportioned. So I've probably been obsessed with one of my own watches.
Good to do from time to time.
I think so. I think because, you know, the other watch that I keep going back to and thinking, wow, this is a really good watch. That flipping turtle that we worked on, the blue Save the Ocean turtle, with that Uncle Seiko razor wire strap on it. There's something about that turtle case, and I don't know what you think about the turtle case, but it almost warms up on your wrist.
Yeah, it's right. The sides of it has like pretty heavy metal, like a pretty good amount of metal on the sides of it. That cushion case, and it kind of warms up, and it's because you make a good point. That watch, you definitely like, if it's 50 degrees and you put that thing on, you're like, okay, well, like warm it up in my palm before I put it, because my wrist will go numb. Just like,
but it's so comfortable, isn't it? I think it's because the center of gravity is low. So I've got, not watch obsession, but I've got two funny stories, and then I'll do the weekly Rolex update. So if this is your first show or the first time you're listening to us, I put my name down for a Rolex a couple of weeks ago, so I'll give a little update on that. But two funny-ish things happened this week. One was that I reviewed what I very kindly was sent in this watch by a brand that I pronounced as Seller. So I wasn't sure whether it was Sailor or Seller. It was a French brand.
It's like S-E-L-H-O-R?
S-E-L-H-O-R. And I do try and research how to pronounce the names, but sometimes, honestly, you've just got to go for it, because there's different ways to pronounce it. Anyway, I pronounced it, and I pronounced it two ways, and I made a little bit of an ice-breaking joke about that I was going to go with Seller. Anyway, I got this comment that was essentially calling me disrespectful for not pronouncing it properly, and that it was dead funny, because I sent a message to the time teller, because this commenter also included him as somebody else who was guilty of the crime of pronouncing a watch name wrong. And I said, I feel very privileged to be
good company there.
Good company there. And I replied back saying, look, I can't, the amount of things that you have to, when you're doing a watch review, the amount of things that you have to make sure that you're getting exactly right, the measurements, the movements. And these watches that I review, they're like $400 or $500. So you've got to do a good job of explaining everything, because that's a chunk of money for somebody to spend, especially on a brand, a micro brand. I kind of replied back saying, look, regardless of what I do, obviously somebody is going to have a comment to say about the way I say something or something that I missed out. I said, but look, sent it off to the brand. My disclaimer on these reviews is I will the brands that send me these watch reviews, they never have any input in the review, positive, negative, or otherwise,
which is great.
But I will send the review to the brand first and say, look, this is what the review is.
Right.
Just to give them a heads up.
Because
normally I'll only review watches I really like. Anyway, so I put this in the thing, or I sent it to the brand. Then another commenter comes, oh, are you in cahoots with this? Are you in cahoots with the brand if they got to see it first?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? The master criminal in cahoots. I just respectfully reply. In fact, I've deleted it off now, because sometimes I delete my reply off, because sometimes I'm like, look, you know, they're just making a comment. I guess a lot of people comment not expecting people to reply to the comments, YouTubers. But I just thought it was funny. But honest truth, I always send the reviews to somebody. I'm like, look, this is going to be my review. Nobody ever, regardless of what you say, it's only happened once to me where somebody has been so upset about something that I reviewed that I took the review down. Yeah, and that wasn't because I felt I'd done a bad job of reviewing it. They'd realised things about their watch, and I pointed them out.
And they were just like, yeah, we have to fix this. Yeah. And then for us, for the podcast, I mean, it's kind of been a standing joke for us. It's like, I'm originally from the East Coast, And so I'm a transplant to California. So I have a myriad of accents that just happen to trip up. I mean, if I say the word horrible. And then you've got an English accent who moved to California, who is now in Florida. So, I mean, listen, you're getting what you're getting.
I know. It's no disrespect. It was funny when I was interviewing Mike at Christopher Ward because I've adopted the Omega, the American way of saying it.
Right.
So he said...
Omega.
Yeah. Omega. How I used to say it.
And I think, was it like, we do this frequently and we don't even realize. So just for our listeners and viewers, like we do this frequently. And it was only when you brought this up that I started to recognize this. Like there are shows that I'll pronounce it some way. You'll pronounce it a completely different way. We'll know what we're talking about. It's fine, everyone. It's fine. Like I'll try to do the correct French pronunciation because I feel, maybe more confident in French, but back and forth. It's fine. It's how we're not trying to disrespect anybody.
No, not at all. And also, sometimes I worry about over pronouncing something in a very French or Italian way. Where you go over the top.
Right.
And I think that's can be equally as disrespectful. So anyway, I'm doing an advance apology for any time I pronounce a name incorrectly.
All right.
So second funny story was I was speaking to my parents, and I don't know if this is the same with you, but sometimes whenever I ring them, in my dad's eyes, I'm ringing my mum. Like, oh, you've rung to speak to your mum.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, no, you can both, be on. Like,
okay.
I'm not, it's, I'm not trying to ask for money. Not this time. No.
Right.
No, but, and he said to me, he's not really a watch guy. My granddad was the watch guy that really got me into watches, but my dad bought an IWC 5 or 6 years ago, and it just suits him. Like IWCs, or he was a graphic designer for years, but he used to just he wore a Fossil for a number of years. In fact, he wore this Fossil that it's quite a good watch because it's called Killing Time, the watch. So instead of numbers on it, it's got every way that it's got 12 different ways you could kill somebody. The number one's like a dagger. The 2 is like a gun.
I'm sorry, this is super morbid.
Yeah,
really?
There's
wow.
the number 3 is like a gallows. Then there's like a poison. It's a really interesting watch. I've got
to see pictures of that.
I'll throw it up here. But anyway, he got an IWC, and it started to gain time. So he didn't ask me about this. He started to gain time. Anyway, he sent it off to IWC. So he's telling me the story. Yeah, he's telling me the story. He says, oh, well, and it went wrong. And I said, well, it probably was magnetized. He sent it off to them and they quoted him like $600 for the service. Anyway, I'm sure it was magnetized because what they did...
Right.
He sent the watch off to them, and they sent it back like a week later and said, "Oh, we've checked it all over, and we gave it a service, and there was." They said, "Oh, the hairspring was twisted." So I was like, so that must be
with
code
magnetism.
For, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He said, oh yeah, they said that the hairspring was twisted in the watch. I said, Dad, I don't think that's a thing, honestly. I said they demagnetized it, just sent it. He got it back in a week, so they must have demagnetized it and sent it back.
I feel like, I mean, you're certainly closer to the surface end of there, but not. I feel like no, I couldn't imagine sending any. Yeah, and getting back in a week. I'm sure they were like, the special $85,000 IWC demagnetizer.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So, I mean, he's happy as ever now.
Yeah, good. He paid for it though.
Well, yeah. Well, he didn't actually pay the $600.
Oh, good.
So I imagine whether that's like an industry term, like the hairspring's mangled. So
maybe something.
Yeah, they made it sound like they dismantled the watch and replaced the hairspring.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah, we checked it out. It's good. And also
Well, anyway, before we dive into the hit or miss section, our new section, I'll give you a little Rolex update. I've now started a thing. This is the third time that I'm doing one.
Keep it going. Keep us in suspense, Sam, about your.
Yeah, so I put myself on the list for the Date Just 41. and I'm going to get Justin on the show. Big shout out to Justin at the Rolex, local Rolex AD. He's been texting me back and forth.
Oh, that'll be fun.
A really cool guy, because I was expecting to get quite not condescending, but I wasn't expecting to get a warm welcome into the Rolex AD. I was just like random person that turned up.
I see. Yeah.
But he's been really nice to me. He's been texting
good.
me, and he sent me a watch that came in.
Oh.
A picture. I apologize.
Oh,
but it had the fluted bezel on it, and I don't. What do you think about that fluted bezel?
Yeah, no, that's the fluted bezel. Sorry, it's just that's not my speed. Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that love it.
Yeah.
But this was after 3 weeks that he sent it me, so I felt very grateful that he.
At least he's reaching out. I mean, a little, unsolicited. Because you do feel. I mean, this is part of the experience. That you're going through, and it'll be interesting to get the Rolex authorized dealer experience. And I mean, we certainly have some expectations, what is that like? So it'll be fascinating.
I went into the other mall that's here.
Mm-hmm.
That mall that I went to is the Mall of Millennia, the one where I put my name on the list. But I went to the other mall, the other big mall round here, and they have a Mayors. So Mayer is the brand name that it is in Florida of Watches of Switzerland.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I went in and spoke to their store manager there called Kevin, and he's worked there he was telling me for 15 years he's been the store manager in this mall.
Okay.
Again, cupboards were bare. The Rolex cupboards were bare. They had
Right.
I think if you're going in for a rose gold ladies pearl master, you're spoiled for choice.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got at least 3 you can choose from.
Like the mother of pearl dial, you got it iced out with diamonds. You got every combination of precious metal, I'm sure.
But that one isn't a dedicated Rolex AD. They have other watches in there. I asked him, I said, have you got any? I put my name on the list of the other ones. He's like, yeah, it's the same list. All of the stores, it's the same list. So he says that we haven't got a list that's separate. The mayors have all got a database. So if one comes into all of them, then they'll let you know. Which I think it's pretty cool that they do that.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I mean, especially for the sub store, for the authorized dealer set of stores, to at least do that. Otherwise, if they didn't, then I'd be going around to every single store. Be like, what's your most rural store? What store doesn't get a lot of traffic? What store you want to turn a bunch of watches on?
Because you're right. You do hear that as a tip of how to get a Rolex is to go to a rural store and
I've heard. Fly to Toronto or something, random. I've heard stories where folks had just, hey, let's spend a weekend in Toronto, and walked in and just happened to pick up a Hulk or just happened to pick up a Batman or whatever it was. I've heard Reddit stories definitely about that. Yeah.
So I spoke to him, and he's got other brands in there. So we went over to look at Tudor, and I was asking him, have you seen the gold Black Bay 58, or have you seen the new chronographs? He said they got 3 of those chronographs in there. He said he doesn't know how people knew it, but the day that they got them, there was a queue outside the store for them.
Wow.
He said they cannot keep those new chronographs in stock.
Wow. I think Tudor, is I think it maintains its value as maybe not goes up in value like some of them, but certainly we didn't see. We've been watching prices of the Pelagos. We have not seen that go down. So those are still in the 4,000 range. So,
well, it's funny to say that because I got another comment on one of my videos, my Shinola video. So shout out to Kelly, who was shopping for a watch for her son for graduation,
nice.
And she came across my Shinola one. So I saved somebody from buying a Shinola.
All right.
And she put in the comments, it totally makes sense why you don't think that Shinola's a good investment. What would you suggest? So I said, I gave 3 bits of advice. Her, the price range she was looking at was in between 500 and 1,000. So I said, obviously, Hamilton or Rado or one of those. Or if you wanted to go a little bit more, Tudor. I said, you might like the fact that you're spending a little bit more, but also to your point, it will probably retain its value in the long run.
Yeah, I feel like you have to get into the like that $3,000-$4,000 to get into that market, but yeah, good pick for Hamilton because at least below like 1,000, then you want to be in like price per dollar. You want to be like best per dollar, like value per dollar, below 1,000. So yeah, good choice.
And then I said, where do you live? Because it might mean a lot to your son to have a watch from the state that he grew up in or that he currently lives in. So obviously I mentioned Vaya in LA and Alan at Zal Baltimore and Laurie are in New York. There's quite a lot that if you're born and raised in a state or you've got a affinity for the state that you live in, you're probably going to find a micro brand these days, or at least like people that I feel like it.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into This Week in Watches, should we have another thrilling episode of our new section, which we showcased last week of Hit or Miss?
Hit or Miss.
I did promise a fancy graphic of baseball players last week, but I couldn't find any, so I put a cat on. So I will have another look. If not, we're going to stop here. You'll either see a baseball player or a cat again. This week on Hit or Miss, Chris, I present to you the Polary Blue 140th anniversary Seiko 62 MAS. What do we think of this one?
All right.
I am leaning towards it being a bit of a miss because of its pricing, but what do you think aesthetically?
I mean, it looks good. I mean, yeah. It looks clean. And we're talking about the second one from the right here. The 62
MAS.
Okay, so it's a white dial, kind of a ocean blue. Not knowing the specs, it looks good. It looks good. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, I will say, tongue in cheek for the 140th anniversary limited edition, to the amount of stainless steel produced by Seiko. So we'll see how it goes.
So for our audio listeners, it's the Seiko 62 MAS style watches that they've been redoing, but this one has blue, navyish blue bezel with a white dial, silver hands, white lume. It's a good looking watch, but it's definitely a departure from, it doesn't look like a vintage style one that they've done. But the thing that struck me about it was it's exactly the same spec as those 62 MAS. I'm calling them the 62 MAS. That's not their proper code. They're based. Right. They look similar to the vintage. This one is actually called the SPB 213.
Yeah,
it looks good. You can pick this watch up in its standard variation, non-limited edition, for between $900 and $1,000, which I still think is expensive. But this one is, Hodinkee have got it here, that they're going to be knocking these out at $1,200. Limited edition of 6,000 pieces.
Wait. Limited to 6,000?
Limited of 6,000.
Okay. How limited to how much stainless steel they can find.
I know they can never make this 6, white dial again.
Yeah. But 6,000. Marketing, playing upon our FOMO, playing tricks on us, because like right now, I'm sure there are like early, I'm sure that I can think of 5 micro brands that their first or second release was maybe 300 watches.
Yep.
So I realize it's Seiko, okay, but we definitely have. I don't think I don't think 6,000. I don't think hits it. I don't think that's limited enough. Now, of course, they'll sell them. And you said $1,200.
$1,200. So to put that into perspective, if you like the watch, then $1,200 probably doesn't seem a lot. But I wanted to put it into perspective about why I think that's expensive, because it's all right, Chris and I joking about, that's expensive, but there's another Seiko. In fact, it's called the SBDC 083. Different style, but it's a diver. This one is $750. Now, why am I making that comparison? Because essentially, they're the same mechanically the same watch. They both use the 6R 3524 dual movement.
Okay.
They're both stainless steel. They're both Seiko, stainless steel bracelet. It's just that one is the 62 MAS style and limited edition.
Right.
But pound for pound, probably the same metal, slightly different look. That's why I'm saying that one's expensive at $1,200, because they're essentially material-wise the same watch.
Yeah. Are they also giving, like, are we doing sapphire? Are we doing any sort of stuff with the bezel? Do we know?
This one's got sapphire.
Yeah.
This one's got the aluminium bezel.
Okay.
Similar dimensions. But yeah, that's a good, that's a good comparison, because you basically, we're comparing Seiko to Seiko here. We're not reaching into another brand. We're looking at another Seiko, and that's a great way to do it. That's like, here you have the same movement, the same internals, the same construction. There is no consideration that Seiko is making limited editions in a different factory than they are the Sumo. I've never heard that. So it's not like a Grand Seiko versus Seiko here. Really tough to justify the price. I will say, from a design standpoint, this watch looks gorgeous. I love it. Like the white dial with the blue, it looks really nice. I would definitely, what this would make me do is look for something similar. And I may not, if I love this, it would break my heart, because I'd be like, I have to get this, and I have to spend that easily $500-$600 premium on something that we all sort of know that it's not truly, it's limited for limited sake. I am going to go with miss. You're going to go with miss. I will also go with a miss. But as with last week, let us know over on the Facebook group or in the comment section of this video whether you think this Seiko is a hit or miss. See if we got it wrong, because I feel like we got last one wrong. Maybe we got this one wrong, so that's okay. Let us know. Let's dive into this week in watches. And there's not been a lot of watch drama, so I thought I would cover, or Chris and I would cover, some of the new release watches, because there's been some interesting watches that have been released recently. I'm going to kick it off with, and I've seen one of these in person, and I was very impressed, but a blog to watch did an article on this, the Bell & Ross Cyberskull. I've seen one of these in person, Chris, and it looks stunning. The mouth moves and everything like that.
Oh, that's great.
But what struck me a bit weird about the blog to watch article is, does it look weird that you can see your arm hair through it?
Right. A little bit. Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know what struck me, because I've got darkish arm hair, or I guess more reddy brown arm hair.
Yeah.
And it looks like I've seen the watch off. Somebody showed it me in there. It's in the local watch store. I don't know how I'd feel about that. Do you think you'd notice it, or is it because they've done like a macro shot on a blog to watch?
Yeah, maybe it's just the picture. But now when you have it in hand, like it would be very similar. Like if you had like we talked about the Hublot Sapphire, so you be able to see.
Sort of flattening. It's sort of flat for the audio listeners. It's flat because of the shape of the Bell & Ross case. It's square. It's flattening against your wrist, so you can sort of see your arm hair through it, just like pressed against the back of the watch. Because there's a lot of, for a smaller dialed watch, you could see a lot through it, but. It's an incredible feat of engineering. I've seen one of these in person. The way that the mouth moves and everything like that it's really cool as you're winding it and stuff. But I know you're a Bell & Ross fan.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
For 10 grand, would you go in all in on this?
10,000. That's not. This is like skeletonized with the moving mouth. That's for a piece of. Kind of horological art. That's pretty decent. I can think of like if like Hublot made something like this, in this style, this would be $40,000. So
I like the fact that they've made the movement all within the shape of the skull.
Yeah, it's cool.
A slight overhang there, but it looks really awesome. They've done a fantastic job of it.
Yeah. So not a sweat-soaked workout watch for your hairy arms, but definitely, a fun, casual conversation piece, when you're out on the town.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm only joking about this, guys. It would just weird me out on my own wrist. It's not that it's on anybody else's wrist. It just, if you saw, you're looking at the time and then you see your arm hairs like smushed up against the back of the watch. Another thing that I'm glad is making a little bit of a comeback. And Breitling have let me just show you this. So Breitling have just released the new chronomats. This might be the first chronomat that I really like the look of, because I was never a fan of that steel bezel on the chronomats.
Yeah. Yeah, with the kind of little bullets, almost like the little shiny bullets on the edge. Yeah, a little bit. But this looks good.
But this one looks beautiful. And they've brought back the additional little clock. I think it used to be called the UTC clock, but they're calling it the dual time. So for our audio listeners, this is a new Breitling chronomat, and it's got a little watch as part of the bracelet. If you're not familiar, Breitling have done this a bunch before, but they haven't done it recently at all.
Right.
I think maybe the last one was the rescue one, but they've actually. What do you think of the little dual time?
It's good that they've, I did check. It's good that they had the history of it, because I definitely feel like it could, it's a little bit of a meme, like, yo, you like watches, little yo dog, extra watch on your watch kind of meme going to it. But they've done that in the past. It kind of is a nod to that. I think it's well done. And I think it's only, if I read this correctly, it's only for their big boy, their 44 has got the additional dual time. I feel like, it looks like everybody else is just on like a strap.
My much loved Breitling B1, there was a version of that had the UTC clock, they called it on that one. But I'm really impressed with the way that this looks. There's a great video online, which if I can find it, I'll leave it. And it's essentially, we've talked about it before on the podcast. It's how they make the chronomat watches.
Yes.
The skill of it is
it's
incredible.
Great. And I think going back to sort of value for dollar stuff, I think this really is like you can get a lot of watch, you can get a lot of chronograph here for the price that these are going for.
1,500.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be quartz. The little. I hadn't read this properly, but I think that must be quartz, the little clock.
Yeah.
But so I thought that was really interesting, and I'm glad that they're doing a little nod to their history as well, because I know they've been revolutionizing the brand, and they've done a lot of vintage reissues or watches. I feel like were inspired by a romantic view they had of the past, because some of the watches were vintage looking, but I don't think they were directly from the catalog of Breitling.
But I think that looking at some of their, I was watching, they had a video, some of their new advertisements. I mean, they have bringing the vintage feel of those into the new, that's part of their design language. They're bringing it through, which is really cool.
Our next story, I often go on eBay and do a cheeky little search for either vintage Casio or vintage Citizen. And there's one vintage Citizen that you see a lot of, and it's a bit of an icon of Citizen. And it was this Citizen Ana-Digi. They've really climbed up in price. Typically, a good example will set you back 300. Citizen, back in the day, they had this Ana-Digi temp watch, which it's so distinctive and iconic. They've bought it back, and I think they've gone way over the top with it. They've made it a Star Wars watch. Have you seen these?
Yeah, I have. I mean, they're certainly not a nod to the original, and I think that any nostalgia you had for the original is lost, because I think we might recognize that this is basically the sort of the same. I mean, it's the same layout and setup as the original gold ones. It's strange that they went in this direction. I mean, aside for the folks that were looking for the nostalgia of the old versions, I think there's a line, and then there's Star Wars fans who would love something like this. So they like, as far as like a Star Wars watch that's cool and fun, yes, I think it does the part. But sort of knowing what its sort of history, this same module. I mean, I'm sure they just found the drawings and the machinery and the chips and just were like, start this machine from 1987 or 90, whatever it was, and just start that printing again, and we'll just, we can colorize the dial or etc. So
yeah, I think the closest one that looks to be close to the original is the C3PO one.
Oh, the C3PO. Yeah, I think so. That looks right. And does it? It doesn't. Is there a specific? I mean, not really a specific C3PO call out. I mean, it does look like C3PO. I get it. Yeah, you could. Yeah. Oh boy, they went all in for this. Wow. Yeah, they went in. Yeah. So, part of me like fun fashion Star Wars fan part of me is like, all right, these are pretty funky and cool. And if I was on my way to check out the new ride at Disneyland, I might be sporting one of these. But yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, like for this nostalgia of the old ways, the old times, they sort of did a little travesty to it. They some questionable silk screen work on that one. All right, our next story is, we might have missed this when Watches and Wonders was going on, but I was on the web today and caught that Cartier has made a solar tank. So this is Cartier's foray into solar-powered watches. This is their first one ever, which is interesting. They're pretty reasonably priced, too. I want to say they have small and large in the 2400, 2800, something like that.
I think this is a great idea because I'm seriously thinking if I can find a good second-hand tank, a smaller one, to buy my mother-in-law one.
Yep.
And there's because it's such an icon.
Yep.
And there's no way. My mother, and my mother-in-law, there's no way that they care that it's a mechanical or not.
Oh, right. And I think so. This solves a big problem for me. So I am planning a gift, and I was like you. I like the idea of a mechanical that doesn't take batteries. That it's just that it never has to be opened up, and it's just ready to go. You just have to wind it and set it and go. But mechanical Cartier tanks, welcome to $5,000. Welcome to even used. I mean, those things are, we've discussed Tudor, we've discussed Breitling. Cartier is definitely one of those brands where it's not, the price is the price. And so this solves a big issue for me, because I feel like I would buy a new battery powered one to get a new one instead of maybe looking for a secondhand quartz, and then feeling kind of like, I don't know about you, Sam, but I get that sort of like, if I'm gonna pick up an heirloom piece, it better be like a fancy mechanical.
Yes.
Like, I don't think, like, oh, here's this used quartz watch. It just, and I understand, like, it's a great, it's a Cartier tank. It's going to be a great, movement, etc. But it's just how it makes me feel. And this is a big part of, what watches are to us. So yeah, it really solves a big problem, which is, now you can, it's always charged up, and it's ready to go, and it doesn't need to be brought into a store and in a mall someplace to have a battery, which I almost am terrified of. I'm sure there are fine folks that can handle a battery change in a Cartier, but again, in a random mall. So it sort of solves that problem. The interesting technology piece here is light is being pulled in through the Roman numerals.
I was going to ask you about that because they've done an excellent job of hiding the solar cell.
Yeah. So if you look, and if that second picture where you see the sort of the light where it's on a black frame, that sort of speaks to where the light is coming through the numerals. Very cool. I think they did a great job with this. These look good. And like I said, they solved that battery but automatic problem, because you just want to, for us watch nerds, giving these as gifts, we know that people are not going to be, they're going to use these every day. They're going to, obviously take care of them, but I never want to give someone something where I'd be nervous, like I'd be terrified to give like someone who has never had a mechanical watch, like a perpetual calendar. Where you're like, oh yeah, and here's the special tool that sets the month, and this one's gonna have, and if you press it too many times, it has to go back to the factory, and someone has to take the entire movement apart. I'd never do that. I'd be terrified to do something like that. So, like I said, this hits on a couple levels.
Well, let's dive into our next story, and this is another one that you spotted, and I'm continually amazed watch collecting that you find out things every single day, even subjects that you think you know fairly well. And I thought I had a good understanding of space watches, but you found another really interesting one.
Yeah, I was we were talking about my Space Turtle, which was a watch that I made as if space shuttle astronauts had gotten with Seiko, so like the art design, like a what if. And I was thinking about space watches, and then someone had mentioned Glycine in the Facebook group. I think it was either the Combat Sub or the Airman, and was scrolling around, and the Glycine Airman has been in space. And so not usually associated with a watch in space. I know there's a bunch of lists out there, but this one was a surprise to me, because I feel like in doing watch obsession about space watches, I would have caught this.
The Glycine Airman, I'm just showing a picture up here of one of the modern ones. Mm-hmm. It's a real icon, isn't it, that I feel is one of those watches where when you start watch collecting you hear about it, but I'm not sure whether you would just stumble across it. But its utility and design has been around for a number of years, since the 1960s, I think. Oh, in fact, it does say the 1960s here on No More Watches.
So this is it's a 24-hour dial, so so it takes a little getting used to reading it. So, so when you look at it quick, you're like, oh, it's 9 o'clock. You're like, no, it's actually, 11 o'clock. or actually, no, sorry, I had that wrong. But it takes a little getting used to reading it. And the story goes, Pete Conrad. So Pete Conrad in one of the Gemini flights, he was an avid Glycine Airman wearer, so he was already had it, and those guys are all test pilots in the U.S. Air Force. So when when he did the Gemini 5 mission, he wore a Glycine Airman, and I was looking at some of the internet photos of this, and I feel like it was sort of rediscovered. Like NASA posted a bunch of their original high definition Apollo pictures for their anniversary a couple of years ago, and I feel like the watch spotters poured over it, and there's two shots where there was this watch you could see and no one could really identify it. It was like the shot was weird, and then it was finally so they found this picture of them, and he's got a Speedmaster on one arm, and then he's got his Glycine Airman on the other. So
yeah, it's amazing that heyday, because like Hoyas went up, didn't they? And
yeah,
it was a really cool story. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Well, before we finish off, I wanted to dive into a really interesting YouTube video that I saw. I've been going down a bit of a rabbit hole watching Anthony at the Timepiece Gentleman, Anthony and Marco, and then Roman over at the Grey Market show that they do. I think this is the real future for YouTube watch channels, is this topical content, maybe topical news shows like we're doing here, but also this day in the life of watch dealers. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to become the dominant over the watch reviews, because people love the watch reviews, but I think you have to like the watch. Sometimes it's a bit hit or miss with the watch reviews for me. If somebody's looking for the watch, then they really like it. But there's another channel called Watch Eric, and they're all friends, these dealers, they're all friends, but he managed to get hold of one of what I think must be one of the hardest watches to get hold of. He got lent the Black Panther Concept AP Royal Oak. I'll leave a link to the YouTube video on here, but it was just absolutely, he did a great job of it. He's based in Miami, so he stood in front of one of these like mega yachts,
right,
reviewing this watch. What he did a great job of was that he was reviewing the watch purely from a functional point of view. So he talks about how this is a lot easier to wear than the previous concept watches that they released.
Yeah,
because apparently the previous AP concept watches were ginormous to wear, and because they had the rubber fitted bracelet. But it's so funny seeing, I guess it's funny for me because the watches that I review, I love them, but they're not, the best part of, I think he was saying the resale value on these are up at the $200,000 range or something, and they're so exclusive that it's a limited edition of 250, and you have to be like a really preferred AP customer to even be offered one of it. You don't buy it, you get offered it. He's actually got a pretty good channel. These grey market dealers getting a chance to see that behind the scenes, because it was funny because they were sort of saying that at one time it was seen as a bit of a cloak and dagger, like the grey market. But
that's right.
I think I don't know what you think, Chris, with the resurgence of this pre-owned market, the grey market dealers are really the knowledgeable ones, because the people in the stores don't necessarily have to be the source of knowledge, do they? Especially when they haven't really got watches.
Yeah. I mean, especially, for maybe some of the retailers that are, like your Macy's and your, they just, that's not going to be their forte. So you're right. I feel like the gray market sellers have sort of filled in that. I'm also noticing, less inventory going to them. In recent times, I'm curious to sort of investigate why that is, or how that is. I feel like when there's plenty of extra inventory, they have all these on hand, and right now I feel like everybody's got money to spend. We're coming out of pandemic. Everybody's got money to spend, and so the used market for everything is hot. The new market is hot.
I agree. I mean, these grey market dealers, the Timepiece Gentleman and this Watch Eric and Roman over at the grey market, the show is the grey market, they call it. They're at a different league. I mean, they're selling the high end watches, but you're right. The grey market dealers, Joe Mashop, a few of the others.
Yeah,
you need to. If you're interested in learning more about the grey market, really, there's some good podcasts about it, because the grey market is a necessary part of the watch industry. It's not. We've talked about this before, haven't we, Chris? It's not like guy turning up to an AD and opening the trunk of his car, and then somebody's coming out the back. Yeah.
It's not, no. Yeah, that I think early on they the dealers sort of personified that, because pre-internet those guys couldn't get on, they couldn't get the coverage, and they couldn't get the ad buys, and they couldn't get on, so no one knew, were they out there? Yes. But then all of a sudden now you have a company that, like Joma Shop, that can outpace regular folks for their e-commerce stuff. And so they're just like, we've got them in stock, we're selling them. But the whole time it was a necessary evil, not evil, but it was necessary, because, there's a particular watch. Okay, we made 6,000 of them. They're limited edition. We can't sell them. So we have to give them to somebody. And we don't want the brand to say, well, we were selling these for $1,200, but now we're going to discount them to $700, because then your idea of the brand goes to away. So yeah, you're right. Necessary evil. So these go into a gray market, but it's also telling when you see certain watches, and we mentioned Breitling recently. That's kind of dried up. I think Breitling has really got its act together over the last couple of years. I mean, some of their stuff was maybe 6 months and was going to a gray market for 40% off.
The gray market, it allows ADs who are kept to very high standards by the brands and sales figures by the brands in order to maintain the relationships. It gives them a way of moving stock that isn't moving. Like if they've got a sales figure or a quota that they have to meet for some of the brands, and they're not hitting it because some of the pieces, then the grey market, that's the advantage of the grey market, is you can move that stock along. Yeah, and they'll do a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of, oh, you don't want to go to the grey market because you don't get the warranty and stuff like that. And also it allows the brands to innovate more. It allows them to take a little bit more risk, because they know that ultimately they will be able to sell these watches. They'll lick a bit of a hit, but it's not, back in the day, that whole urban legend about Apple when it made that Cube, the original Apple Cube, they had to bury a load in the desert as a tax write-off, or whatever, or that that Atari ET game,
which they actually had to bury,
they did bury it, didn't they? In the landfill, and then they dug it back up again.
For those in the United States, a good maybe a good parallel would be Marshalls for stuff, for brand name stuff, for where you'll get brand name stuff that that was at the boutique a year ago, but fashion has moved on, and you're getting it for a big discount. But it's not like it's manufactured in the same place. It's not like there's a different quality. It's just necessary.
So guys, that was this week's episode of Casual Watch Talk. As always, we really appreciate you watching and listening. That was this week's episode of Casual Watch Talk. We really appreciate you watching and listening, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.